Have you ever wondered why your life has never been easy, jived, why your path has always felt different, heavier, lonelier, why the struggles never seem random, but intentional, because the chosen are not created in comfort, they are forged. There is a truth most people will never understand. Being chosen is not about status. It is not about privilege. It is not about privilege. It is not about being special in the way the world defines it. It is about transformation. And transformation requires fire. There is a dangerous myth that many people quietly believe that the chosen are simply born different, that they arrive into the world already strong, already clear, already destined, walking a path that unfolds naturally before them. But the truth is far more uncomfortable. The chosen are not born ready. They are made ready, and the making is never easy. From the outside, it may seem like certain people carry a natural strength, a depth, a resilience that sets them apart. But what you don't see is the process that shaped them. Because before clarity, there was confusion. Before strength, there was breaking. Before wisdom, there was breaking. Before wisdom, there was wandering. Before purpose, there was loss. The chosen are not handed identity. They are stripped down until they discover it. The breaking comes first. The journey always begins with disruption. Something in life stops working. The path that seems secure suddenly collapses. Relationships shift. Dreams fall apart, stability disappears, and in that moment it feels like failure, like abandonment, like life is moving backward instead of forward. But what feels like destruction is often the beginning of construction, because transformation cannot begin while illusion remains. As long as you believe your comfort is your purpose, as long as you believe approval is your identity, as long as you believe security is your destiny, you cannot step into what you were meant to become. So the first step is breaking false foundations. The removal of what cannot go with you. Those who are being formed for something deeper always experience separation, not because they are being rejected, but because they are being rejected, but because they are being rejected, but because they are being rejected. Old habits lose their hold. Environments that once felt normal begin to feel restrictive, and it hurts. Because the chosen are not detached by nature. They are human. They feel loss deeply. They feel confusion intensely. But this removal is not random. You cannot become who you are meant to be while carrying what you were never meant to keep. Growth demands release. And release always feels like loss before it feels like freedom. The fire of pressure. There comes a stage where pressure increases. Responsibilities grow heavier. Challenges become more personal. Uncertainty becomes constant. This is where many misunderstand the process. They assume pressure means they are on the wrong path, but in reality, pressure is proof of preparation. No one strengthens in eases. Muscle forms through resistance. Character forms through challenge. Faith forms through testing, and purpose forms through endurance. The chosen are not shaped by comfort. They are shaped by tension between who they were and who they must become. The silence of hidden work, one of the most difficult parts of being made, is invisibility. There are long seasons where nothing seems to be happening. No recognition, no progress that others can see, no visible reward, only quiet struggle, private growth, internal battles. Because when growth is hidden, it becomes genuine. It is no longer about being seen, it becomes about becoming. And the chosen learn to stand without applause, to continue without validation, to grow without audience, to grow without audience. The shift in identity gradually, something changes, not overnight. The need for approval begins to fade. The fear of rejection begins to weaken. The desire to control outcomes begins to lessen. And a new strength begins to emerge, a quiet steadiness and a quiet steadiness, a grounded resilience, a clarity that does not depend on circumstances. The chosen stop trying to fit into spaces they have outgrown. They stop chasing acceptance that compromises truth. They stop measuring worth by temporary standards because they begin to understand now their journey was never about fitting in. It was about being formed. The emergence of purpose. Eventually, what once felt like chaos begins to reveal its pattern. The struggles that once seemed pointless now show their lessons. The delays that once felt cruel now show their protection. The isolation that once felt empty now shows its necessity, and the chosen realize they were never being punished. They were being prepared to carry responsibility without pride, prepared to endure pressure without collapse, prepared to stand firm when others waver, prepared to lead without needing recognition. Made through fire, becoming chosen is not about receiving something instantly. It is about surviving the process that creates capacity to hold truth, capacity to endure hardship, capacity to act with wisdom instead of impulse, capacity to remain steady when storms rise. And this capacity is not gifted, it is built through loss, through silence, through pressure, through faith when nothing feels certain. The chosen are not born finished. They are forged through seasons that would make many turn back, and it is through this forging that they become unshakable, not because life becomes easy, but because they have become stronger than what once broke them, and in the end, they understand. The making was the mission all along. One of the greatest struggles in the journey of the chosen is misunderstanding what is happening to them. There comes a season where life stops making sense. Plans don't unfold the way they should. Effort doesn't produce expected results. Prayer feels quiet. Direction feels unclear. And internally, a question begins to echo. What is happening to me? It feels like regression, like delay, like loss without reason. But what if the chaos you're experiencing is not destruction, but design? Because there is a hidden process that shapes those who are meant to become more than they imagined. When life feels like it's falling apart, at some point, everything that once felt stable begins to shift. Opportunities disappear. People misunderstand you. Things you worked hard for collapse. And it feels unfair. You begin to wonder if you did something wrong, if you missed something, if you failed. But the truth is this: the hidden process often begins when the visible structure of your life begins to crumble, because what cannot carry your future must be dismantled. The chosen are rarely built on top of comfort. They are rebuilt from the ground up. The stripping season, there is always a phase where attachments begin to loosen. Things you once relied on no longer satisfy. Paths you once trusted no longer open. Voices you once listened to lose their influence. This is deeply unsettling, because human nature seeks security, familiarity, predictability. But growth requires something dangerous, letting go before you understand why. The hidden process strips away false sources of identity, not to leave you empty, but to prepare you to be filled with something real, the confusion. That precedes clarity during this time. Confusion is common. You may not know where you are going. You may not recognize who you are becoming. You may feel caught between who you are becoming. You may feel caught, and this in-between space feels uncomfortable because it is undefined. The old version of you no longer fits. But the new version is not fully formed, so you stand in uncertainty. But uncertainty is not absence of direction. It is the birthplace of transformation, because clarity does not appear instantly. It emerges through wrestling with the unknown. The pressure that refines as the process continues. Pressure increases, expectations rise, challenges deepen, responsibilities stretch you, and it begins to feel overwhelming. But pressure reveals what comfort conceals. It exposes impatience, fear, control, dependence on approval, need for certainty. And once exposed, these weaknesses can be transformed. Just as fire reveals the true nature of metal, pressure reveals the true nature of the soul. The work you cannot see, much of this process happens invisibly. There is no public recognition, no outward sign that something significant is happening. From the outside, it may appear that nothing is changing, but internally everything is shifting. Perspective evolves, values deepen, priorities reorder. Strength forms quietly, and this hidden growth is the most powerful kind, because it is not shaped by performance. It is shaped by authenticity. Learning to stand without support, One of the most difficult parts of the hidden process is learning independence of external validation. There comes a point where encouragement is scarce, approval is absent, and reassurance is minimal. You are left to continue forward without applause, without confirmation, without visible success. This is not abandonment. It is strengthening, because those who must carry weight in the future cannot rely on constant reassurance. They must develop internal steadiness, conviction that does not collapse when misunderstood, faith that does not fade when unseen, purpose that does not weaken when delayed, transformation through endurance. Endurance becomes the quiet teacher. You learn to continue without knowing the outcome. You learn to trust without visible evidence. You learn to remain steady when emotions fluctuate, and slowly something remarkable happens. You stop reacting impulsively. You stop needing immediate resolution. You stop needing immediate resolution because endurance has created depth, and depth changes how you see everything. The revelation of the process, eventually what once felt random, reveals its pattern. You begin to notice that every delay redirected you. Every loss protected you, every struggle strengthened you, every silence matured you, and you realize you were never being shattered, you were being shaped into someone who could carry responsibility without pride, lead without domination, endure without resentment, stand without fear. The power of being refined. Refinement is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming perfect. It is about becoming perfect. Prepared to face complexity without collapsing, prepared to make decisions without panic, prepared to remain grounded when others drift, prepared to endure storms without losing direction. And this preparation does not happen in comfort. It happens in hidden seasons, quiet struggles, unseen battles, private growth. In the end, the chosen discover something profound. The process they feared was never meant to destroy them. It was meant to remove what would have limited them and replace it with strength that cannot be easily shaken. Because before you can step into what you are meant to become, you must first provide the process that makes it possible. One of the most painful experiences in the journey of becoming is isolation, not just physical isolation, but emotional distance. A sense that something has shifted between you and the world around you. Conversations that once felt natural begin to feel empty. Places that once brought comfort begin to feel restrictive. Connections that once felt secure begin to fade, and slowly a quiet loneliness settles in. At first, it feels like rejection, like abandonment, like you no longer belong anywhere. But what if this isolation is not meant to remove you, but to prepare you? The separation begins subtly. Isolation rarely arrives suddenly. You begin to notice that certain environments drain you. Certain conversations no longer inspire you. Certain paths feel misaligned. You may still physically remain in the same places. But internally, something has shifted. The things that once satisfied you no longer do. And this creates tension, because growth often begins where comfort ends. The pain of outgrowing is one of the most misunderstood experiences. It feels like loss, like betrayal, like something is being taken away. But in reality, it is evidence of expansion. You cannot step into deeper purpose while remaining attached to what was meant for an earlier stage of your life. Yet letting go is never easy, because familiarity feels safe, even when it limits you. So when isolation begins, it feels like something is wrong, like you have failed socially, emotionally, relationally. But the truth is, you are not losing connection. You are losing confinement. Silence creates clarity. One of the reasons isolation is necessary is because noise prevents reflection. When you are constantly surrounded by voices, expectations, and influences, you cannot hear your own in. A direction clearly, where isolation creates space. Space to observe, space to question, space to realign. What allows you to examine what you truly believe, what you truly value, what you are truly meant to pursue without pressure to conform. learning who you are without approval. Many people build identity based on feedback, approval, validation, acceptance. These are unstable foundations because they change. So isolation removes these external reinforcements and forces a deeper question. Who are you when no one is affirming you? Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when no one is expecting anything from you? This is uncomfortable because it reveals how much of your identity depended on others. But it is also liberating because it allows you to rebuild identity based on truth instead of reaction. The strength that forms in solitude develops qualities that crowds cannot. Patience, self-awareness, emotional stability, inner clarity. When you are alone, you must learn to sit with your thoughts, face your fears, process your emotions, and develop internal steadiness. You learn not to escape discomfort, but to grow through it. And this growth becomes strength. A quiet strength, one that does not need constant reassurance. The misunderstanding of distance, often those around you may not understand your distance. They may interpret it as withdrawal, as rejection, as change for the worse. But transformation often looks like withdrawal before it looks like emergence. Because before something becomes visible externally, it must be formed internally. And internal formation requires space. The refinement of priorities, isolation also reveals what truly matters. When distractions fade, clarity increases. You begin to recognize which pursuits were empty, which goals were driven by comparison, which desires were rooted in fear. And slowly priorities shift. You begin to choose depth over appearance, purpose over popularity, truth over comfort. And this reordering shapes the person you are becoming. The courage to stand alone. One of the greatest outcomes of isolation is independence of approval. You begin to realize that belonging everywhere is not necessary, that agreement from everyone is not required, that alignment with your path matters more than acceptance from the crowd. This realization creates courage, courage to walk differently, to think independently, to act with conviction. Even when misunderstood, isolation precedes emergence throughout history. Periods of preparation have often occurred in solitude because solitude allows formation without interference. It allows growth without comparison. It allows maturity without performance. Isolation is not meant to last forever, but it is meant to shape you while it lasts. The hidden gift, eventually, you begin to see isolation differently, not as punishment, not as abandonment, but as alignment, not as rejection, but as alignment, not as rejection, but as preparation, because without this space, you would not have discovered your resilience, your clarity, your strength. Isolation teaches you how to stand so that when you return to the world, you do not return needing approval. You return carrying purpose. And that purpose is no longer shaped by where you fit, but by who you have become. There comes a stage in the journey where the process becomes more intense. The quiet shaping gives way to visible challenge. The internal growth meets external resistance. The internal growth meets external resistance. And what once felt like preparation begins to feel like confrontation. This is the stage of testing, and it is unavoidable, because no one steps into deeper responsibility without first being proven capable of carrying it. Testing is not random. When trials begin, they often feel chaotic. Unexpected obstacles appear. Plans collapse. Opportunities close. Misunderstandings increase. Pressure rises. And it is natural to ask, but testing is not random. Specific, because potential without testing remains unproven. The chosen are not meant to simply possess ability, that they are meant to embody resilience. And resilience is only revealed under pressure. The exposure of weakness. Trials have a way of exposing what comfort hides. Fear becomes visible, control issues emerge, doubt grows louder, and this exposure feels uncomfortable because it reveals parts of ourselves we would rather avoid. It is meant to refine what you refine, but you cannot strengthen what you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot grow beyond what you refuse to confront. Testing brings hidden vulnerabilities into the light so they can be transformed. The stretching of capacity. Another purpose of trials is expansion. You are stretched beyond what feels manageable. Responsibilities increase. Expectations grow. Situations demand more than you feel ready to give. And in that stretch, something begins to develop: endurance, the ability to continue when ease disappears, the ability to continue when ease disappears, the ability to act when clarity is limited, the ability to remain steady when emotions fluctuate. Capacity is not built through ease. It is built through persistence and difficulty, the refinement of motivation. Trials also examine intention. They reveal why you are pursuing what you pursue and what you pursue. Are you seeking recognition, comfort, diamond, control, or are you committed to truth, growth, and purpose? Confidence, feed. Only genuine commitment remains. And this refinement matters because responsibility requires integrity, and integrity cannot be built on unstable motives. The strengthening of faith. One of the deepest outcomes of testing is strengthened trust when outcomes are uncertain, when answers are delayed, when direction is unclear. You are forced to rely on something deeper than immediate understanding. You learn to move forward without guarantees, to act without complete certainty, to endure without visible reward. And in doing so, faith matures, not as blind optimism, but as steady confidence developed through experience. The resistance that builds stability. Resistance is not merely an obstacle. It is a stabilizer. Just as physical resistance builds muscle, emotional and situational resistance builds character. It forces you to engage intentionally, to think carefully, to respond thoughtfully, instead of reacting impulsively. Over time, resistance produces balance, and balance produces strength. The detachment from outcomes. Testing also teaches detachment. You begin to understand that effort does not always produce immediate results. That control is limited. That timing is not always yours to determine. This realization can feel frustrating, but it is freeing because it shifts focus from outcome to growth, from control to trust, from immediate success to long-term formation. The emergence of resilience as trials continue. Resilience forms. You discover that you can endure more than you thought, that setbacks do not define you, that difficulty does not destroy you. Resilience is not the absence of struggle. It is the ability to continue despite it, and this ability becomes foundational, because future responsibility will demand stability, not perfection, but steadiness. The transformation of perspective. Eventually, perspective shifts. Trials are no longer seen solely as burdens. They are recognized as builders, shaping patience, strengthening clarity, deepening wisdom. Each challenge becomes less about survival and more about formation, proven through fire. Fire does not exist to destroy gold. It exists to purify it, to remove impurities, to reveal strength. In the same way, testing removes what cannot sustain purpose: fear, dependence on approval, fragile confidence, short-term thinking, and what remains is stronger, more grounded, more capable. In the end, trials serve a critical function. They do not diminish the chosen. They define them, not by what they face, but by how they endure, because responsibility requires resilience. And resilience is forged through testing, not comfort. As the process continues, there comes a stage where the focus shifts. It is no longer just about survival. It is about capacity, because being chosen is not simply about personal growth. It is about becoming someone who can carry responsibility without collapsing under it. And responsibility is heavy. The misunderstanding of strength. Many people believe strength is loud, dominant, to sable in appearance, but true strength is quiet. It is the ability to remain steady when pressure rises, to think clearly when emotions surge, to act wisely when outcomes are uncertain. Responsibility requires this kind of strength because influence, leadership, and impact are not sustained by talent alone. They are sustained by stability. The shift from self to service. Early in the journey, much of the focus is internal growth, healing, Understanding, you begin to realize that your development is not only for you, it is for what you will contribute, for how you will support, guide, protect, serve. Guide, protect, serve. Responsibility shifts perspective from what do I gain to what do I gain to what do I carry. The awareness of impact with responsibility comes with responsibility, comes awareness. You begin to see that your actions influence others, that your decisions affect outcomes beyond yourself, that your steadiness creates security for those around you. This awareness creates weight because it demands intentionality. You cannot move impulsively. You cannot act carelessly. You must consider consequences, long-term effects, hidden implications, long-term effects, hidden implications, and this consideration requires maturity. The burden of decision responsibility often involves making decisions without complete certainty, choosing between imperfect options, acting without guaranteed success, standing firm when others hesitate. This is uncomfortable because decisions carry risk, but avoiding decision carries greater risk. Avoiding decision carries stagnation, while thoughtful action creates progress. So the chosen must learn to decide with wisdom rather than fear, the balance of strength and compassion. Carrying responsibility also requires balance. Strength without compassion becomes harsh. Compassion without strength becomes harsh. The chosen must develop both the ability to hold boundaries and the ability to understand struggle, the ability to lead and the ability to listen, the ability to listen, the ability to act decisively, and the ability to remain empathetic. This balance is not automatic. It is learned through experience of consistency. Responsibility is not sustained through occasional effort. It requires consistency, showing up even when motivation fades, maintaining integrity even when unseen, continuing forward even when progress feels slow. Consistency transforms potential into reliability, and reliability builds trust. The detachment from recognition, true responsibility often goes unnoticed. The work may not receive praise. The work may not be celebrated, but the impact remains real. The chosen learn to act without needing validation, to serve without seeking approval, to contribute without expecting reward. This detachment protects integrity because it keeps motivation rooted in purpose rather than attention. The emotional resilience required responsibility also requires emotional resilience, the ability to absorb criticism without collapsing, to face misunderstanding without collapsing, to face misunderstanding without resentment, to endure pressure without reacting impulsively. Emotional resilience prevents instability. It allows clarity in difficult moments and steadiness in uncertain situations. The long view carrying responsibility demands long-term thinking. Short-term comfort must often be sacrificed for lasting benefit. Immediate ease must sometimes be set aside for future strength. The chosen learn to prioritize sustainability over convenience because what they carry must endure. Becoming capable, ultimately, responsibility is about capability. The ability to remain steady under pressure, to act wisely under uncertainty, to support others without neglecting self, to maintain integrity without external reinforcement. This capability is not innate. It is developed through testing, through growth, through experience. The chosen are not defined by titles, but by what they can carry without breaking. Responsibility is not a burden meant to crush. It is a weight meant to strengthen, because through carrying more, you become more grounded, more resilient, more capable, and capable of sustaining what once would have overwhelmed you. As the journey continues, something subtle yet powerful begins to take shape, not something visible on the outside, not something that can be measured by status, success, or recognition, but something far more important: inner strength, a steadiness that does not collapse under pressure, a resilience that does not fade when challenges arise. This is the formation of an unshakable core. The difference between outer and inner strength: many people develop outer strength Many people develop outer stray, nef, siv. They become skilled, confident in familiar environments, capable when conditions are favorable, but outer strength is conditional. It depends on support, on control. Inner strength is different. It remains even when conditions change, even when outcomes are uncertain, even when control is limited. It is not built through comfort. It is built through experience, strength formed through difficulty. Difficulty has a unique function. It forces adaptation. It requires adjustment. It demands persistence. Through difficulty, you learn to endure discomfort without fleeing, to face uncertainty without collapsing, to continue forward without guarantees. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to strengthen stability, not through avoidance, but through engagement. The quiet growth of resilience. Resilience does not appear instantly. It develops slowly, through repeated exposure to pressure, through repeated recovery from setbacks, through repeated effort despite fatigue. Over time, resilience becomes natural. You begin to notice. You recover faster. You remain calmer. You think more clearly, not because difficulty disappears, but because your response has matured. The stability of self-control. Inner strength also involves self-control. The ability to manage reaction, to pause before responding, to choose action deliberately rather than impulsively. Self-control protects clarity. It prevents emotional turbulence from dictating decisions. And it creates space for wisdom to guide behavior, the independence from external conditions. As inner strength forms, dependence on external conditions decreases. You no longer require perfect timing or constant reassurance or guaranteed outcomes. You become capable of functioning effectively even in uncertainty, because your stability comes from within, not from circumstance. Hence, the development of emotional balance. Inner strength includes emotional balance, not suppression of feeling, but management of it, the ability to experience emotion without being overwhelmed by it, to acknowledge fear without surrendering to it, to feel pressure without losing clarity. Balance allows sustained effectiveness, even in demanding situations. The clarity that emerges with strength comes clarity. You begin to see situations more objectively, to evaluate challenges without panic, to identify priorities without confusion. Clarity reduces reactivity and enhances intentional action. The reduction of fear. Fear often arises from perceived lack of capacity. When you believe you cannot endure, you hesitate, you avoid, you withdraw. But as inner strength grows, fear diminishes, not because risk disappears, but because confidence in your ability to respond increases. The endurance of purpose, inner strength, supports long-term commitment. It enables persistence beyond initial enthusiasm, beyond the motivation, beyond excitement, because purpose often requires sustained effort. And sustained effort requires stability. Without inner strength, responsibility overwhelms. With it, responsibility becomes manageable, because strength creates capacity to remain steady, to think clearly, to act wisely, even when pressure intensifies, becoming unshakable. Ultimately, inner strength produces steadiness. Inner strength produces steadiness, a grounded presence, a calm resilience, an ability to withstand disruption without losing direction. Not rigid, not resistant, but resilient. The chosen are not defined by absence of struggle, but by their ability to remain steady through it. Inner strength is the foundation that allows growth to endure, and it is formed through experience, through challenge, resistance, until steadiness becomes natural and resilience becomes part of identity.